Hey guys, now we have a burn deck. And now, quite often when people try to get in Modern on a budget, people are like, play burn. It's the cheapest deck, but it still sets them back a few $100s. Now, this version of deck is not going to be a traditional burn deck, but it's still going to be a very strong, very budget deck. And on MTGO, it's 32 ticks. In person, it's $92. And we're going to dive right in here because it's a very fast, very powerful deck. Now, the purpose of the deck, why it's different than more normal burn decks, is that it has Chandra's Incinerator. This spell, it's 5 and then red for a 6/6 elemental. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is the total amount of non-combat damage dealt to your opponents this turn. Trample, and I love to see that on a 6/6 card. It's just kind of hidden there between those two abilities. It's just like, oh, people won't notice it has trample, right? Well, turns out we noticed. And it also says, whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, Chandra's Incinerator deals that much damage to a creature or planeswalker that player controls. Now, I used to run like a 2-mana version of this in my sideboard for burn, for really pesky creature matchups, so I could keep damaging them, but still damage their creatures. But this is just so much better. It can also hit their planeswalkers, and it's a 6/6 with trample. So the purpose of this deck is very much going to be how much damage can we deal to our opponent without combat very quickly, just so we can get the incinerator out really quickly. So the ideal course of action here is turn 1 Seal of Fire. Seal of Fire is it can be a delayed shock. So it's going to be a 1-drop enchantment, and this has seen a lot of popularity for decks like Lurrus, where I can keep replaying it. So it might not be that bad of a card to pick up anyway. But what it's here for is to play it this turn, and then next turn play something like Vexing Devil, and the likelihood is they're gonna take the 4 life unless they have removal. If they have removal, they'll allow it to stay on the board and kill it. But if turn 2 you play Vexing Devil, they let the 4 damage go through to them, and then you sacrifice Seal of Fire, you can suddenly just cast Chandra's Incinerator on turn 2. And that's going to be very powerful. And if they said, hey, Vexing Devil is going to the graveyard, it's probably because they don't have the removal to deal with it. And if they don't have the removal to deal with it, then they don't have the removal to deal with Incinerator. Anyway, so suddenly on turn 2, you went from dealing 4 damage, dealing 2 damage, to having this out. So you can deal a lot more damage and deal with their board at the same time. This deck is has a lot more capability of just kind of like the control part of burn, where you can bolt their creatures and then swing in, but this time you can just bolt their face and in turn bolt their creature. Anyway, we have that in here. We have some other burn evergreen cards. Grim Lavamancer for some mainboard graveyard hate for how much Uro is in the format right now and how much Lurrus is in the format right now. 4 Monastery Swift Spear, because it's a 1/2 haste prowess for 1, is just so powerful. And Eidolon of Great Revel has 3 of. It's just because, like, it's a very powerful card, and it will be dealing a ton of damage to our opponent. This is probably one of the best burn cards that was printed for Modern. Next up, we have what everybody thinks when they hear burn. They think of the spells. They think of the bolts. So we have Lava Spike, 1 mana, deal 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Well, no, to target player or planeswalker. Lightning Bolt, deal 3 damage to any player. 3 Shard Volley to sacrifice the land to deal 3 damage to our creature player. The land will almost never matter that you sacrifice. Rift Bolt is a way to suspend, so if I suspend this on turn 1, and then I cast another bolt on turn 2, I can easily just cast Incinerator at that point. Next up is Skewer and you can even just use it to bolt your opponent. Skewer the Critics is a spectacle, deal 3 damage to any target. Now what's going to happen there is it's another way to just deal extra damage to your opponent or possibly to creatures. And so that's going to be yet even more burn. Then for the sideboard, we have 16 mountains, just because it's the color of our deck, and 4 Forgotten Caves to add a bit of utility. Make sure that those lands that we draw are not dead draws. And that is the main deck. It's a very simple deck, and I was able to explain it super quickly. Now, Incinerator is very, very strong. It's not killable through Dismember. It's not killable through Bolts unless you use 2 of them. And it's very hard to deal with unless your opponent has something like Path to Exile. It's not even able to be killed with Fatal Push. Then our sideboard is Soul Guide Lantern, dealing with our opposing graveyard decks. It also adds a bit of utility through drawing that card and exiling something on ETB. I really like Relic Progenitus, but Soul Guide Lantern adds a lot of utility. Dragon's Claw against other burn decks, against Storm. It also allows us to gain life. Searing Blood for an extra way to deal with our opponent's creature. And then we deal 3 damage to them. And then the 3 damage that goes to them also comes back around with Incinerator and deals even more damage to their creatures. Shrouding a Burning Rage is for those control matchups where you just slowly build up, or the slower matchups where you slowly build up and then just in one hit just kill them. Skullcrack is if there's a deck that gains life, or if there's a card in your deck that just doesn't work, then this is what you want to bring in. Smash Smithereens is going to be a way for you to deal with artifacts, and it's going to deal even more damage to their controller. So if you use this, you destroy their artifact, deal 3 damage to them. If you have Incinerator out, you're going to deal 3 damage to another creature they control. And that's just going to be a lot of extra uses, extra value out of your cards. Anyway, that is Modern on a Budget, Incinerator, Burn. It's a very fast deck, very simple. Though it has a low skill floor, you can outplay a lot of people with it. If you have any questions on the card synergies, card strategy, or any of the card choices, please let me know below, and I will see you next time.